What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, reviewing today Back 4 Blood. I want to begin this video off with just a gigantic warning, which is do not buy this game. Straight up, it's not worth $60. If you get it on Games Pass or you buy this on sale in the future, it's a decent experience. But as it stands, this game is short, it is repetitive, it actually makes you play on the same maps again and again. It is just not a very fun experience. But I want to try and talk about the goods and the bads. I want to try and just be objective and see what's so interesting about this game, even if it does kind of fail what it's attempting to do. Now, early on, just a couple months back, there was actually a big Back 4 Blood beta, which I did enjoy. A tiny slice of this game is something that I feel like really exemplifies the best aspects of it. This is one of those games that I feel like if you play it in short intervals, like sitting down with your buddies and playing it for 60 minutes at a time, it can be pretty enjoyable. There is some real highlights to this. It's the fact that this game just repeats itself and makes you go through the same maps, the same cities, and do the same objectives again and again and again and again, where it really loses any sense of enjoyment. So what is Back 4 Blood? Essentially, this game is Left 4 Dead 3. It's by the original developers over at Turtle Rock. They've decided to come together to create another one of their classic co-op-focused zombie shooters. The biggest problem, though, is the fact that whereas the previous Left 4 Dead games were so interesting and new, this just feels like a generic retread, a knockoff. But let's look at some of these exact levels to show you what's going good and what's going bad. Now, first and foremost, this game is essentially three big acts. It's these separate chapters of the game that have you going to different locations around America, playing as a squad of immune people. These are humans that cannot be infected by the zombie virus. And so what they're trying to do is a series of tasks, rescuing civilians, trying to help with research, or sometimes just being a very loud distraction. As you explore these completely destroyed towns, you're going to quickly notice the fact that this is the most dystopian of dark futures. Everything is completely run down, the city streets are filled with garbage, and the undead are pouring from every single open window or every single sewer drain. This is definitely a worst case scenario, but thankfully we're very well geared for this apocalypse. There is guns all over the place, and there is a sense of randomization to almost every aspect of this game. While you're playing through the missions, they each have these different objectives inside them, like trying to pick up particular keys or trying to just get a car battery to open up a gate. And the locations of these items move around every single time you play it, so you're never going to get the exact same time whenever you choose to play through this. Along with this, there is this fun randomization to the weapons themselves. Every gun is something like a sniper rifle or a shotgun, but it can have different abilities on it, a scope, an extended clip, different features that make them actually behave and look and be different. And that makes it so you're just constantly trying to hunt and look in every corner for that next exciting upgrade. Now, there is a little bit of customization in this, but it's kind of broken as well. So while you're exploring, you can pick up a gun you like. So you get a golden freaking machine gun and you're really enjoying it. Well then, if you happen to find a scope, you can easily attach it. But once things are put onto your gun, they can't be removed. This is definitely one of the weirdest missing features I've ever seen in my life. But if you happen to find like an extended clip, you cannot take it off until you find a different extended clip to swap it out with, which means that a lot of times if you're carrying something like a really heavy duty sniper rifle that you've already decked out and then you find another one that's better, you cannot take the upgrades from one gun and put them on the next. Anytime you find something new, you essentially just throw your weapons in the garbage can and have to pick them up. Now, this is a tiny flaw, but it begins to really kind of exemplify what's most wrong with Back 4 Blood, which is that it feels like they did not do nearly enough play testing. Like, one of the things in this game that you'll come across is the fact that while you're trying to do these randomized missions, the maps themselves are pretty well contained. I actually want to just do a gigantic compliment. These cities cities, these towns, these little villages we're going through sometimes, they're actually kind of gorgeous. Like in a graphical detail sense, a lot of times seeing these like smoky times where there's fog that's rolling over a highway, or you're going through a sewer system and you're trying to just use your flashlight to see that next shambling undead. There were a lot of times in this where I was actually just taken aback by how much they managed to pack into the ambient experience. This really manages to have a certain like vibe to it, and they stick to it the entire time. My problem is that for some reason you go through these maps multiple times. Like there are these 5 maps that you go through over and over again. Like there's this gigantic checkpoint. You go through this to go to a church, then you come back to it after like this extended helicopter mission, and then you go through it again for a 3rd time for a final boss battle. Now I fully understand that game developers oftentimes have to try and like recycle environments to just save on budget, but the part that sucks is that every time you visit a map for a 2nd time, it always, and I do mean always, feels like filler content. It is just so redundant. A lot of times what makes this game the most aggravating, and the part of it that just kills any sort of excitement you have for the next mission, is just how much it tries to make you do the same stuff again and again. Like after you fight your way through a 30-minute battle in a cornfield, reaching the safe room, and then going straight in the next gigantic cornfield is not exactly something that builds up hype. But let's talk a bit about the special infected. Now, this is deep into a zombie apocalypse, and somehow these undead have managed to start to evolve. Now, these creatures specifically are called the Ridden. Now, the Ridden seem to take different paths. There's your typical rotting shamblers, which run up and just punch you in the face, but there's also these new things that can do things like spit acid, self-destruct, or sometimes just grab one of your teammates and try and drag them off into the darkness. Each of these different infected on their own is actually kind of fun. I think that they have some very interesting design ideas. It's fun to try and fight them, it's fun to protect yourself, and sometimes it can even be fun when you actually die to one of these creatures because you just got bested. My problem is that as you go deeper into this game, clearly they had no idea on how to ramp up the difficulty. So as you go deeper into the game, they just start throwing these special infected at you 3, 4, or even 5 at a time. So you'll have like 5 different bashers coming from every different direction, and then an exploder shows up, and a spitter shows up, and a hag shows up, which can just grab you again. And it makes it where instead of being a fun challenge, it just feels tedious. A lot of times, me and my teammates, while my squad was beating this game, we just had to constantly go at a half mile an hour, creeping along, checking every single corner, and making sure we never ever made a single mistake, because you would just be so quickly overwhelmed. Now, this is not necessarily a difficulty problem. My issue isn't with being defeated or seeing a game over screen. My problem arises with the fact that this feels like such lazy difficulty. Like, I can't even enjoy these cool maps or my great guns when I'm just so swarmed at all times with 10 million weak losers. Now, we need to talk about the cards. This is definitely the biggest advancement for Back 4 Blood over Left 4 Dead. Now, this is a system where between every match, you constantly get a new special upgrade. Now, these are completely randomized. You build a deck while you're in the base of different benefits you want to have. These can be things like bulletproof vests, which reduce the amount of damage you take. You can get an extra ammo belt, which can make it where you reload quicker or just carry more ammunition in general. Or there's even things like just base health straight up being upgraded. Now, these improvements are actually pretty fun. I think that a lot of these cards can be exciting when they pop up. And also, as you go to the shop and unlock new abilities, it can be fun to see all the different crazy cards that do exist. The problem is that with the good, there's also some randomized detriments, which are called the corruption cards. So every single chapter of this game, as you play through the different acts, is broken down into these separate sections. Now, each time you choose a new beneficial card, and you get a new corruption card. Now, the corruption cards are things that completely screw you over. These can make it it where zombies are on fire and will torch you if you get touched. They can make zombies wearing bulletproof vests, so only headshots count. There's extra random bosses which can pop up and just pound you into the pavement, or even things like time limits. Now the problem with the corruption cards is that the deeper into the game you go, the more they stack them up. There were times where I was doing some of the last missions where I had so many different debuffs that made it where you just constantly felt like you were being smothered by all these different styles of challenge just layered one on top of the other, where you can't even just play the game. Like, even if I got a legendary gun, sometimes I would feel weak because you just happen to get some sort of card that's going to screw over your particular playstyle. Now let me talk about the thing that's definitely the most annoying. But before I do that, let me give this game a compliment. There are certain times where each of the chapters have these gigantic things called finales. They're basically like huge showdowns. These can be all sorts of different things, from trying to just burn out the nest to escaping a sinking ship, or my personal favorite is one where you have to be a distraction to a bunch of people who are trying to escape. So you go into a bar, crank up the song Black Betty, which is a personal favorite song of mine, and you just shoot every single zombie you can for 5 full minutes to make sure that everybody can get out of town safely, while you and your people stand there and be freaking badasses. When this game is good, it is very good. The problem is that it just grinds you down over the course of its 7 hours of story, to the point at which you just can't even care about the highlights because they just get washed out by the monotony. Now let's talk about the worst part of this game, the thing that just completely makes it where you don't even want to explore. There are these things that are called alarms. They're hidden all over the map. Every time you play through the campaign, these alarms get randomized. This can be stuff like doors that just set off an alarm, which attracts a horde. There could be a bunch of birds, which if you scare, guess what? It attracts the horde. There's stuff like snitches. There's particular monsters that will attract the horde. Goo from the special infected. Guess what? That'll bring up another 500 zombies. Now what's annoying is that a lot of times you need to open doors in order to actually look around. If you want to try and find more weapon upgrades or just more ammunition because you're always low on bullets, it sucks to keep setting off alarm after alarm after alarm, especially when sometimes some of them don't even make sense. I was in an underground sewer and there was a broom closet with a security alarm. Who is locking up these brooms? It is the stupidest thing sometimes, and it drags what should be some very fast and freaking scary gameplay down to a snail's pace. Why would you make alarms everywhere? Why would you make it so that anything can just set off? It makes it where you're constantly just mowing down tons and tons and tons of mindless, boring zombies in the hopes that you get to progress a bit further. Now, there is something else in this game, which is the PvP. There is the ability to actually play against other people. But whereas in Left 4 Dead, you did the versus multiplayer on the standard story mode maps, in this, you can't do that. You have to play them on these very tiny square maps that slowly shrink over time. There's this Fortnite style cloud that slowly crushes it together. So when you're playing as the humans, the objective is to just live as long as you can through the round. You get points just for surviving. Whereas the infected, you get a chance to choose any of the monsters in the game and try and use their abilities to try and just crush each of these humans as quickly as possible. The idea of this is fun. The big detriment is the fact that this map is so tiny. It's very difficult to find good hiding spots. It's difficult for the humans to really hold out. It makes it where if you want to survive, a lot of times the 4 teammates just hide in a corner with the heaviest shotguns they can find and hope for the best. It is boring. How do you make zombie multiplayer boring? It's nuts to me that they managed to screw up so many different layers of this. I am so freaking disappointed that they did not put a little bit more effort, a little bit more love, a little bit more of a budget into this project, and instead they made it a repetitive mess. Oh my gosh. If you have a group of friends and you plan on playing this on Game Pass, all your friends have an Xbox, you're probably going to have a decent time, at least in the short term. But if you're actually trying to just spend $60 and you plan on spending 100 hours in this, it ain't happening. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go with the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Back 4 Blood a 5 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video and this very Insomniac style review, please give this video a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. Metroid video tomorrow. Woo! Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.